But meantime, the Republican Economic Recovery Working Group will be tackling the issues that are facing small businesses today when the members hold another forum. Here now with more on that is Representative Eric Cantor. He's the Minority Whip. And Congressman, thank you for joining us today.
Becky, good morning.
All right, the focus of this forum today on small business, what are you hoping to get across?
Well, I mean, the bottom line is the small businesses of this country are the job creators. We know that 70% of the jobs in this country come from small businesses and entrepreneurs. And as we begin the deliberations on the budget and we see the direction in which this administration is going in, we want to bring some real small business people who are going through the tough challenges of this economy up here to Capitol Hill today to hear what's going on. And I know that in my district last week, I had a forum with 25 small business people, and if there was one unanimous cry, it was get the lending markets working again.
Right.
Small businesses need their lines of credit restored.
That's been a complaint we've heard often here, too, in the Squawk email box. How do you go about doing that? The Fed and the Treasury have been undertaking some pretty massive steps to try and get the banks lending. How can you specifically help small businesses who need those credit lines?
Well, certainly the move by the Fed yesterday, I think, was aimed at trying to bring down rates and trying to jumpstart the credit markets again. But I don't believe that we're going to get the lending markets working again until we get a plan from this administration on how they're going to get the impaired assets off the books of the banks. At the end of the day, the bank fix is what we need in order to bring the economy back, certainly to bring the lending market back.
Yeah, the Wall Street Journal opined today that, yes, Virginia, there is a bad banking plan. Is this something that you expect to see this week, next week?
Well, I certainly don't think it can come soon enough because, again, we've been hearing about a plan. We've been hearing about some type of public-private partnership and how we're going to bring about the private sector and the hedge funds in to begin buying these assets off the books. I think investors, again, we've got to be aiming to get their confidence back so we can see markets begin to function again.
But hasn't the Fed begun to take some major steps with that, with what they announced yesterday as well?
Yeah, I don't think there's any question, Becky. I think that was certainly a step in the direction to try and jumpstart the lending markets. But remember, we've got to have an exit strategy. Just as all this stuff is brewing on the AIG issue and others, the exit strategy's got to be bring private capital back in. Let's let the government step back out. Government can only be a catalyst here. We know ultimately it's private capital that will end up bringing us out of this recession.
Congressman, the only problem is, though, you're asking for more and more to be done, but also for the government to get out at the same time. Is there any inconsistency with that approach?
Well, listen, I don't think, more and more to be done. Frankly, I think what we need is a plan. We need a plan to send a signal to the investors that are sitting on the sidelines that there is some exit strategy. I think that, we've not seen the Treasury Department do the hard work that I believe is necessary. We hear the stress test is going on in the various financial institutions. Let's hear about what that is. I think if investors heard that the Treasury Department was looking at the banks, they're going to divide the banks into three. There are healthy banks, those that are impaired, and those that need to be shut down.
Right.
And if they could come out with this notion that perhaps we'd have an RTC-like structure to go ahead and be definitive and pull these impaired assets out of the market, I do think then with some certainty the investors could jump back into the game.
I hear you, and there has been a lot of frustration, a lot of people who have wanted this plan to be out there, but in the Treasury Department's defense, this is an incredibly complex plan. And we've seen with AIG what happens when you try and rush a plan and maybe push something without being incredibly thoughtful. There's a lot of backlash, and we saw just that with AIG. What's your take on Ed Liddy coming before Congress yesterday?
Well, certainly the dose of contrition that I think folks wanted to hear was present, but there's clearly outrage out there. How in the world does something like this happen? First of all, you got to look to the administration and Secretary Geithner and the fact that they were involved with the extension of the additional tranche of TARP. How in the world was this overlooked, if it was overlooked? And then look and see what's happening in Congress. There's absolutely no excuse to bring a stimulus bill to the floor that had 1,100 pages in it and not not allow us to read that stimulus bill. Perhaps if we were given time, the proper checks and balances could have been in place so that we could have identified the provision that has now begun the controversy around Senator Dodd, that we would have had the discussion then and perhaps not then precluded the government from stepping in and disallowing these bonuses.
Would you like to weigh in on the Treasury's plan for the bad banks as well, for the toxic assets? Is that something that Congress should be able to...
Maybe the Republican Party should issue their own plan on how to remove those toxic assets.
And
you're asking for a plan, Congressman. It's easy to have an alternative budget, for instance, but this is obviously very difficult, or the GOP would have had their own ideas a long time ago.
Carl, we've got our own ideas, and I think you and I have spoken before. Our Economic Recovery Working Group is doing that. We're going to roll out a housing plan next week. We're going to have more experts come in and talk to us about what our plan should look like on the bank fix. But there's no question, if we see the administration's plan and have some disagreement with it, we are committed and will have a coherent counterproposal to do just that.
Okay. Congressman, really quickly, we heard some language from Connie Mack yesterday asking for the Treasury Secretary to resign. Is that view widely shared on the Hill? Is he going to come under even more pressure to leave that post?
I don't think you're going to find anybody that doesn't have some doubt right now about what in the world is going on at the Treasury Department.
Sure, understood. But, should Geithner be worried about his job, or at least Congress's support for his job?
I think that Secretary Geithner owes this country an explanation as to what's going on. I mean, it just seems that the administration's in disarray. Again, it started with all the budget discussion and the various topics and the numerous things that they're trying to do. And really, it seemed as if that the economy was just a part-time focus. And when you sit here and talk about, raising taxes on small businesses, raising taxes on family for the energy tax, but yet you see things like this going on at the Treasury Department, you sort of scratch your head and wonder, are the priorities there that we need to effectively get us out of this this economic turmoil we're in?
I agree. I guess I'm just wondering, the disarray, you could argue, as much disarray as we'd be under if we had to go through the nomination process again, that could be an even bigger mess.
Well, I think, Carl, that's a good point. I mean, we need to be sensitive to the market's reaction. I mean, that's why I think, again, if Secretary Geithner could come forward with a clear explanation of what went on. What went on with this turnaround with Senator Dodd? First he says it was Treasury that asked him for this provision. Next he said it wasn't. I mean, this just adds to the uncertainty.
Congressman, thanks for your insight. Always good to talk to you.
Absolutely. Thank you.